Hello and welcome to another video. In today's video, I'm talking about the relationship between the fearful avoidant attachment style and the dismissive avoidant. Can these two make it work? I am going to give you an inside scoop into what my clients tell me are their biggest struggles in these type of relationships, and also what are their biggest gifts. Now, if you've been on this channel a while, you also know that Matt and I have started our relationship, him being a dismissive avoidant and me a fearful avoidant. And we have worked our way to being securely attached. And I am so excited to be sharing this information for you because before I did this work, I was a yoga teacher for 14 years and I did a lot of healing. Energy healing, spiritual healing, therapy, plant medicine, so much, you name it, I did it. I did countless teacher trainings, Vipassana retreats, and yes, it all helped, but I still felt like there was a missing piece. And that missing piece, and I feel like it is really the final frontier in healing our trauma, is healing our relationships. We cannot be fully healed from our trauma until we have mended our relationship to ourselves, to our own bodies, to community at large, and of course to the people that we hold the dearest in our lives. So I've studied attachment in different forms. I've studied it from the integrative attachment perspective, which focuses on core wounds and how to reprogram the subconscious mind in order to heal. I've also learned about emotionally focused therapy and how our emotions are extremely important to create connection and how we can communicate them in order to create that connection. And I've also learned about somatic attachment, so polyvagal theory, and how we can heal through our bodies. So on this channel, I'm giving you this holistic perspective of healing, and I hope that it is very relatable to you, and I know from your comments that it usually is, so I cannot wait to see what you have to say about this pairing, fearful avoidant and dismissive avoidant. I know a lot of you on this channel have this type of relationship or just coming out of this type of relationship. So do let me know down below your biggest challenges and your biggest gifts in this type of relationship. All right, so let's go into it. I'm going to first just list the biggest complaints of the FA about the DA and vice versa. Now, this might sting a little, so if it does, if something gets triggered inside of you, just remember that triggers can be the key to unlocking the door to our healing. So I know when I listen to videos and I sometimes get triggered by them, and I'm like, oh, that is the work that I still have to do. This is something that this is my biggest challenge maybe at the moment, because maybe I don't know how to heal that thing that gets brought up, right? Even as a relationship coach, we still have things to grow and heal. So I invite you to just look at it from that perspective of, okay, maybe if I heal this thing, it's going to take me to the next level of my relationship. Okay, so FA. The biggest complaints that I hear from fearful avoidants are that they feel unheard in the relationship. They feel unseen often. They often feel inconsidered. And there can be a lot of thoughts or issues around feeling wanted. Like they don't feel wanted by their dismissive avoidant partner. This is a really big one. And yes, it can relate to sex, but not only sex. Being wanted for a fearful avoidant who has experienced rejection in their life can feel the need, this huge need to feel wanted in a relationship. And DAs are not very forward with their affection. So of course that is going to cause some friction over there. And fearful avoidants often don't feel safe in a relationship with a dismissive avoidant. Now, a dismissive avoidant often feels criticized by the fearful avoidant. They really don't like the volatility because fearful avoidants can be really quick to anger or quick to jump to conclusions because they get triggered quite easily because of the past trauma. And that causes the dismissive avoidance to shut down even further, which causes more problems in the relationship in general. And sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes dismissive avoidants feel controlled by the fearful avoidant. And vice versa, right? Because sometimes the fearful avoidant doesn't feel like the dismissive avoidant is very controlling, but they feel like the dismissive avoidant holds all the power in the relationship and they have to cater to the dismissive avoidant. Okay, so let's break this down into a little bit more nuanced and relatable information. So let's talk about feeling unheard for the fearful avoidant. Fearful avoidants have a core wound of feeling unheard generally from their past. In their past, they've been in situations where their voice didn't seem to matter. So in relationships, it is extremely important for them to feel heard. And dismissive avoidants don't know how to empathize because they come from a background of neglect. Nobody was empathetic with them. And empathy is something that is a skill that we learn. Fearful avoidants have been practicing that skill for a very, very, very long time. They had to do it because it was their survival instinct in their home. They had to learn how to pick up everybody's emotional cues to keep themselves safe. So that became their defense system, defense mechanism, so they know how to do that. So if you're sitting with a fearful avoidant, they will be very present and make you feel very, very heard, really heard and seen. Meanwhile, dismissive avoidants don't know how to do that. And the problem arises, and this is a really big one. If you can solve this, this can really help the relationship a lot. The problem arises in conflict where the dismissive avoidant, instead of empathizing with the fearful avoidant, they either dismiss the fearful avoidant, they can deflect or perhaps make a joke, or they simply shut down and stonewall because they are scared of saying anything that can aggravate the situation. So basically, the dismissive avoidant gets an emotion like a hot potato and they're like, oh, okay, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what to do with this. I just want to get rid of it. Okay, so they're trying to get rid of it by diffusing it with some joke or some kind of tactic that worked for them in the past. And sometimes this can be really cute, you know, like when you're a little bit upset and somebody makes a joke about it and then you realize, okay, maybe life isn't that bad and what I'm upset about is not that bad. But if it happens consecutively over a longer period of time and very serious conversations cannot be had, the fearful avoidant tends to feel unheard, and the more unheard they feel, the louder they will get. So this is the interesting thing, that when a person in an argument doesn't feel heard, they will raise their volume up. Okay, so that is a telltale sign. If you guys are having conflict that is super loud, something is not being heard there. If one partner or both partners are bringing stuff up from the past, which is often the fearful avoidant, it means that something in that was not heard. It is repeating itself in this moment, and that's why they are drawing your attention back to that moment to say, hey, this is a pattern. Can you see that you have been repeating it then and then and then and then and then? And they are stating a case because they are not feeling heard. So they feel like they are in a court of law and then they have to pull up all of this evidence to go like, but this has happened before and you haven't been hearing me. And they're trying to not allow this bad thing that happened in the past to happen in this present moment and destroy your relationship. But the way the fearful avoidants go about it is that they get super loud. Okay, and especially because they don't feel heard. When the dismissive avoidant learns how to hear the fearful avoidant, and when the fearful avoidant also learns to speak in kind, gentle ways to the dismissive avoidant, when this communication starts to work, conflict begins to get resolved, and a lot of this work and this agitation is done. Fearful avoidants want to have closeness in a relationship. They crave deep intimacy, deep conversation, deep connection. They don't really know how to go about that. So they often criticize their partner because they assume that their partner wants to hurt them, or the partner doesn't care, or somehow the fearful avoidant doesn't matter because of the cold nature of the dismissive avoidant. And because they have that assumption, instead of trying to empathize with the dismissive avoidant, which is so natural to them, they immediately get into defense. And when one of their needs doesn't get met, they start to fight very loud. And that causes more shutdown to the dismissive avoidant. Now the dismissive avoidant can't hear anything, and they also just want to get out. And because they don't know how to handle conflict, but also they want peace and harmony and calm and play and love and good feelings in their relationship, which is not unreasonable. So both of these people have these needs that are not being met, and they can be met, but they have to compromise, right? It is a give and take, 100%. And as a fearful avoidant, I didn't understand how to communicate. I didn't understand that I was critical, because growing up, I was just surrounded by a lot of sarcasm. I was surrounded by a lot of criticism. I was surrounded by a lot of volatility. So for me, the way I was talking was quite normal, and my anxious, preoccupied friends would be like, yeah, that's quite normal conversation. We kind of like a little bit bitey, a little bit snippy. But dismissive avoidants don't do well with that because they have those wounds of inadequacy where they don't feel like they're already enough. They don't feel like they have the skills to be in a relationship. And they also feel defective. So if we're going to poke on those wounds, we're not going to get anywhere. The fearful avoidant is just not going to get the deep conversation and connection that they want. And if the dismissive avoidant doesn't learn how to empathize with the fearful avoidant, or any attachment style, right, they lose out on having an incredibly important skill and tool of perception, of making other people feel heard and connection, because that in itself can dissolve a lot of conflict. A lot of us in conflict want to just feel heard, right? We don't even sometimes need the problem to be solved. A lot of us want to be heard, want our feelings to be heard, want our experience to be heard. And yes, some fearful avoidants, they wanted to see changes, of course. And the more the relationship progressive, that can be another fight where the fearful avoidants say, okay, you've learned all the stuff, you've studied all the stuff, but you're not taking action. So dismissive avoidants can sometimes do that. They can study a lot of information and learn about attachment theory, even if they are kind of doing the work, but not actually do the work, all right? For various reasons. They have this core wound of helplessness where they sometimes really don't know how to do it, or they think they're doing it. Whatever the case is in this situation, the fearful avoidant needs to understand, how can I communicate in gentle, soft, loving ways that are more invitational, that are more inspiring and motivational. And the secret to this is really a big one for my fearful avoidance. If you start to talk to yourself like that in your mind, it will not even be a difficult thing for you to do to other people. The way you speak to yourself in your head is the way you speak to your partner. And the reason why you might be so triggered if I say to you, you need to speak to the dismissive avoidant in gentle ways, is because maybe you were not spoken to in gentle ways when you were growing up. Right? Nobody gave you that. So that cup of validation, of motivation, you had to be your own cheerleader. You had to always just get up and do the stuff and be that hard person on yourself to get stuff done, to just get through life. If that's you still in your inner dialogue, this is why it might trigger you to speak softly to somebody else. So the quickest way is just be loving to yourself in your head. And if you are, that's what's going to come out of your mouth to your partner. Now let's talk about sex, friends. Okay, so sex. Fearful avoidants are often passionate people. They usually love sex. That if they have some sexual trauma that is unresolved, it can be an issue. It can be an issue from the perspective that they might not want to have sex, or they might want to have too much sex, right? There might be something there. Or if they are on the anxious side, they might want to have sex in a way that is very clingy, and make the other person feel like they are smothered or being used to pacify their anxiety. And this happens on a very subtle subliminal level. Or, fearful avoidants might just be really passionate people who love sex. But what we see with dismissive avoidance is at the beginning of the relationship, they might want that closeness and intimacy, physical intimacy. And often in long-term relationship, it really dwindles for the dismissive avoidant. Partially because they are living in functional freeze. So I did a video on functional freeze. Functional freeze is basically your body's systems are shutting down. So your body is not in a state where it wants to reproduce. So of course it will shut down libido. Also for dismissive avoidance, if we cut off our sense of feeling in the body, right? They are often disconnected from their body. And that's where our turn on really lies. So that might prevent them from having the sex life that is amazing for them. Also, fears of deep intimacy, engulfment, and for dismissive avoidance can also be about performance. Sex can be something that feels like I have to perform, I have to please, there are points. And it's about my performance. And it's not something that is regenerative to them, that is not relaxing, that is not giving to them. So this can become a problem, of course, in the relationship. And it can lead some people to cheat, or it can lead to a lot of resentment and fights. So it's very important for both to have this open communication, right? Once we can start to have this open communication about like, hey, what's going on for you? I'm seeing these changes. We used to make love this amount of time, now we're not. Is there something that you need, right? And speaking and asking questions of your partner, and at the same time advocating for yourself, and just also saying like, you know what, this is important to me. So could we resolve it? Can we do a course? Can we go to a sex therapist? There's so many sex coaches and therapists at the moment. There's so much stuff online that you can do. Kim Anami is somebody that I used to love and follow. She's really out there. I love that woman. So, it could be something like that you want to do some kind of a course on sexuality or something like that to bring this connection, because in a long-term partnership you guys are reliant on each other to fulfill those needs for each other, so you might as well have fun. Also, creating a securely attached or becoming securely attached is a way to have better sex. Once they've done studies on all, or not once, but they've done studies on all of the attachment styles and their satisfaction with sex, and securely attached people have the highest satisfaction rates of all of the attachment styles. So if you needed more inspiration to become securely attached, I hope that hit the bell for you. All right, so mistrust, is also a big thing, especially going from fearful avoidance to dismissive avoidance. So fearful avoidance struggle to trust dismissive avoidance because dismissive avoidance can sometimes lie, whether it's white lies, trying to get out of situations, or sometimes they will say, appease and say, yes, 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 I'm going to do this thing, and then they don't do this thing. Dismissive avoidants also don't understand empathy, so they struggle to understand how to consider a person from their point of view, right? Like if, say for example, it's my wife's birthday and she likes a big celebration. Maybe some fearful avoidants like a big celebration, right? The dismissive avoidant will think from his point of view. So he will think, for example, from sympathizing, not empathizing. Sympathizing, he will go like, oh, I wouldn't want to have a big birthday, so my wife will not want to have a big birthday. So we're just going to do something low-key and watch movies at home and have a small like birthday cupcake, okay? But for the wife, that's not what she wants. She wants to be considered from her point of view, to understand that, okay, what is going on for her? She loves to be celebrated. She loves to have all her friends around. She loves to have everybody she loves, their quality time with them. That is from her point of view. So dismissive avoidants often miss that. And it actually goes for all attachment styles. They really struggle to empathize, not sympathize. We all think that everybody else thinks in the same ways, but we don't. Okay, one person's actions can be representing a different intention. But I feel like I'm waffling a little bit, so I'm going to get off that train. But basically, you want the dismissive avoidant to empathize and consider the fearful avoidant. Fearful avoidants also need to learn how to trust, right? And sometimes this pair is attracted to each other because they know that they are both a little bit avoidant. So they will not require this deep, deep, deep intimacy, true intimacy of opening up and really being there together, because of that avoidance. So sometimes that can be why they have been attracted to each other, the dismissive avoidant and the fearful avoidant. Of course, this is on a subconscious level that I'm talking about now. All right, so let's go to what is really working for the fearful avoidant and the dismissive avoidant, and why they really want to be together. So first of all, what creates attraction is a balance of similarities and differences. And in the differences, we need to like the differences. So if we see somebody that is different to us, but we want to acquire certain qualities that they have. So say, for example, the fearful avoidant looks at the dismissive avoidant and sees them as having great boundaries. And that can be very appealing to the fearful avoidant, who doesn't really have great boundaries. They have very reactive boundaries, sometimes very loud and volatile boundaries, but not really healthy boundaries. But they would look to the dismissive avoidant and see them being very calm and composed or consistent in how they present, which are all qualities that the fearful avoidants don't have. And they will look at the dismissive and go like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing that this person has mastered these things that I want. Okay, so that's what creates attraction. There is some kind of commonality. So commonality can be like, okay, they're both a little bit avoidant. They both love freedom. They both want independence. If you ask Matt why he was attracted to me at the start of the relationship, I mean, there were lots of factors, because I'm fabulous, you know. I'm joking, because, you know, there was a lot of factors, but one of the things he mentions to me is that, I just heard you going on all of these camping things by yourself and traveling by yourself. And so immediately that says that he was looking for a partner who would give him space, who would give him freedom, who wouldn't be solely reliant on him for their joy and happiness, and that wouldn't cling to him, because his freedom is so important to him. So this is what works, is that they both want freedom. If they can communicate clearly, because a lot of the time they don't, they both will not tell each other that, hey, I need some space. They're both trying to people please each other, and then they don't do that. So if they can both be honest about their needs, this can really, really work, because fearful avoidants often like to spend time by themselves. They also like to go out with their friends or do their hobbies and activities. Even though there might be a small, short period of like separation anxiety before there is a separation, once the dismissive avoidant and fearful avoidants are in their individual spaces, when they are doing whatever they want to be doing, whether it's relaxing or being with friends or spending time by themselves, they really enjoy that. So that's what really works in that relationship. They are both focused on growth. Now, this can be something that is similar and brings them together. That's the commonality, but it's also something that it can create a lot of difficult contrast and challenge. So fearful avoidants often grow deeply personally. They often love personal development, right? If they don't like personal development, they might be growing in their career or their passion, their hobby or something like that. But generally, they love to learn something. They love to develop themselves. And often they are not afraid of facing some deep emotions. Whereas the dismissive avoidant will grow, but doesn't really want to look at emotions. They don't want to rehash the past. And even when they are studying about emotions or personal development, they will go more for like Stoic philosophy or any type of esoteric philosophies or principles that will separate them from their emotions, that are very strong-headed about, okay, you need to just be focused and focus on this intellectually and have boundaries and not really look at your emotions. So the growth is what attracts them. They love that about each other, that yes, we can grow together. Usually fearful avoidants love intelligent people, love intellectual conversations. There was a name for this one thing. I know I used to always love people who had a great vocabulary. And I think it's because when I moved to South Africa, I didn't know how to speak English. So that created this deficiency in my head that when I hear somebody speaking English very, very well, oh wow, it just like blows my mind. And I know I have a YouTube channel, but I often feel very vulnerable with the way I speak, so, and I'm still working on that. I'm still working on opening my voice. So it's very interesting. But so that will then make me attracted to somebody who can you see, now I've lost my track of thought, but I'm going to carry on because I'm not doing this video again. So that will make me attracted to somebody who can express themselves very easily, and that is the attraction that can be created. So look at your attraction and let me know what it is. Like, do you have any weird attraction points like me? Vocabulary. Okay, so freedom, intelligence, okay, but the intelligence, the growth can be sometimes in different directions, where the fearful avoidant can go like, okay, you're growing, you're learning, but you're not applying it to real life. And that can be a real point of challenge in the relationship that they will have to work through. And also, dismissive avoidants can learn that it's okay to look at emotion. It doesn't mean that you're rehashing the past or you're bringing up negativity. Allowing yourself to look at that. If you have difficulty to looking at that, it means that there are a lot of triggers there. That's why it's so difficult to look at that. We eventually get to a point where we can look at the past and not really get triggered, that no emotional component really comes up for us anymore, besides maybe like compassion for ourselves, and other people. Now, there can be a lot of mystery in this relationship, which is exciting for both of them. So generally, dismissive avoidants are already mysterious. They like to keep their lives private. And fearful avoidants, what makes them mysterious is that they are always changing. They're always growing. They're always adapting. They put themselves in different situations. They generally have friends that are very different from each other and can adapt to different social groups. So this also creates that mystery and intrigue that keeps them together and keeps them discovering each other. Like Matt and I have been in a relationship going now on 6 years in December now, 2024. and it still feels like a fresh relationship. It still feels like I'm just as much in love with him as I was at the beginning, and it's just because we keep growing. Okay, and then DAs show consistency, and sometimes DAs can really use that calm demeanor, that kind of coolness, to also be the pacifier in the relationship. So if two people are shouting and screaming at each other, there could be a lot of breakups in the relationship. But the dismissive avoidant, when they are sometimes very consistent, especially when they get into the relationship and they stay long-term in the relationship, they are there, boy. Once they decide they are in the relationship, they are really committed in the relationship, which is very, very unusual. And then fearful avoidant can still go in and out, in and out, in and out. So this consistency of the dismissive avoidant and how they show up can be very healing for the fearful avoidant. I really struggled with consistency in my life, in my personal life, when it came to just simple things like exercise or my career goals or anything like that. And I've learned from Matt how to be consistent. So that was, one of those things that really attracted me to him. I was like, wow, this guy is so consistent all the time in like his work goals and how he shows up with exercise. And then I've learned how to do that. Right? So we want to find those places of similarity, also those places of where we are different. And it's very important that when we find our differences that we like, we integrate them. Because if we don't, those are the things that are actually going to drive you crazy long-term in a relationship. And what I mean by that is, how sometimes you can get into a relationship, and for example, you got into a relationship with a DA and they were very calm and boundaried, and you were like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing, this person has got so many boundaries, I didn't have boundaries. And then you get so frustrated with them a year into the relationship because you realize those boundaries are also keeping you out, right? So if we don't learn how to have our own boundaries and speak up for ourselves, that is going to create that challenge. And this is why the things that make us fall in love with each other can also make us hate each other in the long term if we don't do the work to integrate those differences into ourselves and continuously keep growing. So can these two make it work? 100%. But it does require work. I would suggest work towards secure attachment. Start with something that is easy for both of you to work on, and that is communication. Have communication, evenings or meetings every night, every week, however often is manageable for both of you. Don't allow things to boil over. And fearful avoidance, the quicker you start to speak about your feelings in a way that is gentle and soft, invitational and vulnerable. Both people need to get really vulnerable. If you don't get vulnerable, you will get stuck in a power struggle, and that can continue for years and years and decades till eternity, or until somebody leaves, right? So power struggle, the quickest way out of power struggle is vulnerability. Power struggle is this idea that I am not going to be vulnerable because I feel like I'm going to give the other person power over me. But vulnerability is acknowledging that I have the power within me, that even if I show up vulnerably with my open heart and then the other person doesn't respond to me in the way I want, I have the power to deal with that. And that is true, authentic power, is power within ourselves, power that is filled with self-love and self-compassion and the love and respect for another human being as well. All right, my friends, I hope that you got something out of this. I feel like I waffled a lot, but I think I also gave you a lot of value. So let me know down below if you're still here, 34 minutes in. Thank you so much. And please share this with anybody that might benefit from it, because I would love to have everybody in the world have amazing relationships, because imagine what the world would look like if we could all get along with each other. I'm sending you big love till I see you next time. Ciao.